All right, hello 14ers. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is March 1st, 2020, and it is a late one for me tonight. Good news for those who like the longer videos. Tonight is not going to be one of the intro videos like the last two here have been. I will be doing another Daniel one, but today is going to be all about a revelation in the understanding of Jeremiah 52. We've covered a number of these things in Jeremiah and what Daniel says, and we're going to cover something that we spoke about several months ago, maybe even close to a year ago, about Netanyahu. Remember, Netanyahu was like Metanyahu, and that was the name of Zedekiah. His name was changed to Netanyahu. I mean, it's unbelievable when you see the alignment of reality to the alignment of the scriptures and to the alignment of what we've been talking about for a long time, that we know Israel will be surrounded and attacked. The bride will escape. The 40 days of the Lord. Jerusalem will be surrounded and attacked and destroyed. You know, Jews will flee, many will be dead, and the tribulation will have begun. And how we've been saying all of these things must happen before July 30th, 2020. And the reason we're saying before July 30th, 2020, all of these things must have already taken place is because, with July 30th, 29th to the 30th, is the 9th of Av. So you're going to see something. We've spoken about this before. You're going to see tonight, this, or I guess whenever you're watching it, this connection to the 5th month event that we were talking about, that Zechariah says these things would happen before, is the clue. And the video we've done on this one here, right here, that there is an expiration date in 2020 by which time all of these things must have already taken place. Must have already taken place according to Scripture. But you're also going to see this connection to where this event of the 9th of Av will take place again. You see, in the Jews, let me go to this. Let me show you this real quick. This 9th of Av, okay? The 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av. Look at what it says. Does it say twice? So yeah, here it is. The fast commemorates the destruction of both the first and second temple in Jerusalem. Okay, the first and second temple. I'm going to show you where it's going to happen again with the third. All right, and Jeremiah reveals this to us, and you're going to see where Jeremiah is revealing the two destruction time frames, the two attacks that will come. One with Netanyahu at his 11th year. The second that will come 10 years later. That's right, 10 years later. And it lines up with what Daniel chapter 9 has been telling us when he says in the destructions, plural, destructions of Jerusalem. Okay? So let's get started in this. Oh, Father, please open people's minds, open up their understanding. Let them receive it, let them see it, and share it. Bring the people who are desiring understanding, Father, bring them through the Holy Spirit to hear it, to receive it, to understand it, and to share with those they love the truth of the season and time that we're in. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, watch this. First of all, for those that are brand new and haven't heard this before, you definitely want to go watch this video. You're going to understand the Gospels revealed in who they're speaking to. This is going to reveal to you the true timeline of seals and trumpets. And they're short videos, 30 minutes each. If you want, after you watch these, or if instead of watching these, you want to go to see the two of these in one, you know, not all the same stuff, but virtually just explained and more time being able to explain all these things, this is the key video right here. If you have less time, watch this one. Then when you have a little bit more time, watch this one. All right? And when you have more time, then watch this one. You'll understand this season and time that we're in right now. And guys, don't forget, see all these links up here to the website. There's GoFundMe, there's PayPal, but Facebook and Twitter, guys. Facebook is I'm going to start putting a lot of my own posts, a lot more comments in there. They can be copied and added into Twitter as well. But this is a place where so many people, you know, our brother Uncle Jimmy, who takes care of this for us, he keeps letting me know, you know, because this is where we can reach everybody. Everybody who's got connections to other people are all connected on Facebook. So we can reach a lot more people. All right. So I wanted to throw that up there. So check out these links that are there as well. Now let's get into this. You're going to see here. Remember, I spoke about this on Saturday, yesterday. Sorry, little sips of coffee in between. Remember, we were talking about this past Saturday on the Disciple channel, the live show we did yesterday, these events, these things that the rabbis have been speaking about, and the Yitzhak Kaduri, who said, you know, when there's elections and no government, and there was another one that we talked about with the Sea of Galilee, and we showed that the count that it by somewhere in March, the Sea of Galilee, around give or take mid-March, the Sea of Galilee will be to that point where it'll be full, and it hasn't been to that full point since I think 2004. We had this one, when this rabbi, who is it? I think Kissel, who was doing this interview. These are these prominent rabbis, and they were saying, look, you want to go vote this year, which is probably, guys, as we speak, the elections in Israel, the third round of elections are probably happening right now, or they're about to start lining up in the morning. This rabbi and these rabbis are saying, look, it makes no difference. You know, we were saying this yesterday on the live show. It makes no difference, the rabbis are saying. Never have the rabbis ever spoken like that to say, vote or don't, it doesn't matter. And this is what I wanted to bring up. It says, another righteous rabbi said that according to the current situation in heaven, there will not be elections. Rather, there will be war. Cautioned Kissel, if the elections do take place, it's pointless. Since it will end like the other elections, no government will come out of it. No one will take the government from Netanyahu. Decades ago, Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, one of modern Israel's most revered sages, as well as this one, Rabbi Shishim, both predicted that Benjamin Netanyahu would be the state of Israel's last prime minister prior to the Messianic age. Okay? That he would be the last prime minister. Even this one that we've been talking about, and many others have been talking about for a few years now, or at least the last 3 years. Yitzhak Kaduri, who found the Messiah and knew that it was Jesus, right? And he died, I think, in 2006 at 108 years old. He was the most revered, like it says. That Benjamin Netanyahu would be the last prime minister. That whether they have elections or not, it makes no difference. War is about to come. Here's what we're getting at. Watch this. First of all, let me show you something in Daniel chapter 9. This is going to connect things from Jeremiah to Daniel to Zechariah to Luke, all the whole thing. Remember this in Daniel 9, in verse 2? It says, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years. Wherefore the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations. Desolations, plural. Okay? Desolations, in the destruction. Okay? Of Jerusalem, plural. So he understood it by the books of the numbers of years, by the books of Jeremiah. This is a big deal. DestructionS. So we know that Jeremiah, as the prophet, he's talking about all these situations that would have already happened, but they're also prophetic words for the future. That's why Jesus told us in Luke 24, the things that must still be accomplished in me that are written in the law of Moses, in the Psalms, and in the prophets. All right? They still are to come, even though they were situations in many cases that have already taken place. They are types and shadows for the future as well. And that is what I'm going to show you today in Jeremiah 52. In the final book of Jeremiah, we see both destructions being given in two parts of Jeremiah. From Jeremiah 52, 1 through 11, and then the second part later, and you're going to see. I never caught this before. You see, guys, right here, let me show you this real quick. I'll jump down, but I'm going to go back. Remember how excited about this I was last year? It was shared with us by Tabitha, disciple Tabitha, and it says, now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And it's about when Jerusalem's going to be attacked. Okay? And I thought, oh my goodness, did it actually give us the day, the year? Man, this is awesome, because it was the 19th year we were looking at it like that. Now, when we were looking at this last year, why was it so much more exciting? Or why was it exciting? Because we understood what Zechariah was telling us in its 14 chapters to the 14 years that we've talked about many times here. When we go to chapter 7, and it says, speak unto all the people of the land and to the priests, saying, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, those 70 years, meaning for 70 years, you fasted and mourned on the 5th and the 7th month. But you never did it going forward. Not in the 71st, 72nd, 73rd. You never did it again. You see, and it says, those 70 years when you were doing it, Jerusalem, when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and the cities thereof round about her, when men inhabited the south of the plain. Everything is past tense when you did these things for 70 years. The fasting and mourning in the 5th and 7th month, in particular the 5th month, is this one we were talking about here, which is the 9th of Av. All right? This 9th of Av, July 30th, Zechariah is prophetically telling us what we taught in this video right here. There is an expiration date. We know it. It has been revealed to us. And prior to this date, like I said, the escape must happen. The Lord in his 40 days, Israel surrounded, compassed about, and then attacked. All of these things must happen between now and the end of July. You understand? You understand how crazy this is? All right? Within this time frame, all of this must happen. So when we saw this last year, and we were building, and Israel had already turned 71. Right before the revelation came that Israel wasn't really 71, they were actually still 70 because they didn't yet have a government in 1948. They were under a provisional government. So what had happened is when we saw this and understood this already, and we had Jeremiah 52 come to us in the second portion of it, and we read this, I thought, oh my goodness, here it is. they'll be attacked and destroyed on the 5th month. But no. Zechariah didn't say that that's when they were destroyed. Zechariah said for 70 years they observed the fasting in the morning of the 5th and 7th month. You see? Meaning prior to, sometime from after the 5th and 7th month fasting in the morning till before doing it in the 71st year, they will have been destroyed, attacked, destroyed, and removed out of the land. Okay? Before the 5th month. All right? Before it. And then we go to Zechariah chapter 8, and this is something we recently were touching on a little bit more. In Zechariah chapter 8, verse 19, it says, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, and the 5th, and the 7th, and the 10th shall be unto the house of Judah gladness and cheerful," and so forth. This one says now the 4th month. So why didn't chapter 7 tell us about the 4th month and started at the 5th? Because we understand that something of the attack will have taken place either in that 4th month or by that 4th month. You see? And they won't be, you know, would we say they won't be doing it in the 70th year? Probably won't be doing it in the 70th year, right? As this end of the 70th comes, sorry, in the 71st year, they won't be doing it. Watch this, because otherwise it would have been mentioned as well. Watch when we go here into Jeremiah now. You're going to see this connection to the 4th month and this connection to the 5th month. But they are two separate events. Remember what Daniel said. Okay? Remember that he would accomplish the 70 years in the desolations. There are two desolations coming. One that will kick the tribulation off. And what's the other one we know of here in this ministry? What's the other one we know, guys? When Satan comes, right? When Satan comes. When does Satan get kicked out of heaven? When is he kicked down to the earth? When he's going to stand in the holy place. And they're going to destroy Jerusalem and the walls and everything. You see, that's not talking about here. That's talking about 10 years later, right? Remember we say it's about 10 and a half years later? Right? It's in and about that time frame. Watch this. In Jeremiah 52, watch. This was exciting. I was talking with Charles, and Charles had sent me something about something in Jeremiah 52, and as I was going to look in it, something else caught my attention, completely unrelated to the King Nebuchadnezzar thing. But as I was reading, it finally dawned on me. And it was great because we already had some of the understanding here in Jeremiah 52 because we've covered it before. But as we've grown in greater understanding and we're coming into these final moments, we've gotten more clarity and more clarity and more clarity. Okay, remember this guy, Zedekiah? Remember Zedekiah? Zedekiah, watch this guy. Zedekiah, where is he? Okay, Zedekiah, king of Judah. Zedekiah, originally called Netanyahu. Did you hear that? Zedekiah's original name, it was changed. There's scripture about it. His name was changed from Netanyahu to Zedekiah. Isn't that interesting? Sound familiar? Does Netanyahu sound familiar? Well, when you see this, it's going to sound even more familiar. He reigned for 11 years total. Netanyahu, this Zedekiah character, of which I'm about to show you Jeremiah 52 and the time frames of the two destructions, but where the first destruction comes during the reign of Zedekiah, who's Netanyahu. And this Zedekiah, this Netanyahu, or think of this as Netanyahu. You understand? This is why I was showing you the prophetic word that these rabbis were speaking, that it won't matter because Benjamin Netanyahu will be the last prime minister of Jerusalem, of Israel. Okay? Here's another thing. Before I forget, remember we were talking about this for those that watched the live show. When does Jerusalem, see, they captured Jerusalem in 1967, right? In 1967, they captured Jerusalem. Jeremiah has 52 chapters. And in the 52 chapters, it's about the judgment against Jerusalem in the desolations of it. You following? Jerusalem has now been part of Israel for 52 years. So if we look carefully, what are we in? The 70th year right now. We've been talking about it for a long time now. For 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it is. Jerusalem, Israel is in their 70th year, and Jerusalem has been held by Israel for 52 years. We know that they won't observe these things in the 71st or going forward. And we know there was this connection to Daniel understanding the books by the years of Jeremiah. Well, when does Jerusalem, having been taken by Israel or captured, however you want to say it, I guess when they captured Jerusalem, they've had it now 52 years. When does it turn to 53 years? May 22nd. On May 22nd, 2020, it will be 53 years. But according to Daniel, who understood the books by the numbers of years, to Jeremiah, well, he's got 52. And in the 52nd is the understanding of the destruction coming. Remember this calculation? Do you remember even why this Jerusalem Day, see, this is why they call it Jerusalem Day. It's from when they captured it in 1967. This Jerusalem Day, this year, on May 22nd, from April 12th, which is Resurrection Day. Remember when we broke down how Luke knew all things in order, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the beginning of chapter 1, it starts off with a census being taken. And in America, there's a census for the first time in 10 years. That's going to be taken on April 1st, it begins. And then we go later in the chapter, and it's Jesus being born, and it's a 40-day event. And what do we have here? This is Resurrection Day, April 12th. And if you add these 40 days, guess where you end up this year? May 22nd, Jerusalem Day. Is this that count the Lord's been telling us about? Because what's going to follow is destruction. Destruction is coming very, very soon to Jerusalem. But don't panic, bride. Don't panic, those in the Lord. I would say probably everybody watching these videos has no need to panic. The bride will escape all these things. They will not see the attack on Jerusalem. They will not have any part of any of it. All right? So there's some very, very interesting connections of time going on right now. Well, let me show you this. Zedekiah, or Netanyahu, reigned for 11 years. Reigned for 11 years. Well, you want to see this? Benjamin Netanyahu assumed office March 31st, 2009. I don't need to take out the calculator, right? 11 years from when he assumed office, March 31st, 2009. March 31st, 2020 is Netanyahu Zedekiah's what? 11th year. You see, guys, when we were looking at these things last year, we never think we're going to get to these points, right? We just think, oh man, yeah, it looks good, but I mean, I know he's not in his 11th year yet. He hasn't hit 11, but you know, we're seeing all these other dates because this whole ministry has been based on the 70th year. We know when the 70, towards the end of it, and when the 70th is over, boom, tribulation begins. The 14 years will begin. And now here we are. We've been looking at these other prophetic, or not prophetic, but these other possible connections in time throughout this past several months, and even last year earlier and in 2018, because we thought we were in the 70th. Now we know the truth. We now know this is the deadline. There's no possibility of it going any further when you understand the truth of the 13th to the 14 years. And now here we are, coming to the anniversary of the 52 books of Daniel saying the first destruction, where the two destructions are going to be explained. One of them is when Netanyahu, who had reigned for 11 years, and watch this. Jeremiah, starting in 52 verse 3. For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, till he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Now check this out. In the 9th year, what you're going to notice down here, see, that's the 9th year. What you're going to notice down here when we get to the second attack, it's now the 19th year. And why is this important? Because it revealed, it was part of the revelation of the time frame between the two attacks. And here's the other key. When they broke down the walls and the temple, the house of the Lord. There is no house of the Lord in Jerusalem. The walls haven't been destroyed to be rebuilt yet. Remember, this is going to tie us right back in to the rest of Daniel 9, the prophetic part that people talk about and that we talk about as well. So what do we see? In the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, 10th day of the month came. And look at this. He and his army against Jerusalem, and pitched against it, and built forts round about it. Does that ring a bell? How many times have we shown this is what's coming to Jerusalem? The first attack of war will be against Jerusalem. And then World War III, will break out throughout the earth. You see, this is what we've talked about. Even in Jeremiah 4, it talks about disaster coming from the north. The lion has come up from the thicket. The destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. Jeremiah 4:10, Lord, surely you have greatly deceived this people in Jerusalem, saying you shall have peace. This is what they're trying to do right now, right? Whereas they're not going to have peace. The sword is going to reach unto the soul. And then we keep reading down, and it says, published watchers have come from a far country to voice. They were at a field. As keepers of a field, they're round about against her. See, against her round about. When we go to Luke, we've covered this many times in Luke, this is what we know is coming. We talked about this in the triumphal entry story. Oh, and guys, I've got another video building as well about this whole triumphal entry. And you know what? I promise you, I'm not going into it. I'm just doing a little sidetrack. I'm going to show you something here. Look at this in John chapter 12. What is the triumphal entry? For those who understand what I'm talking about, we know the Gospel of John has an end time hidden revelation and revealing in it, within its 21 years, the 7 coming to an end, the bride's about to go, and it's the 14 years from chapter 8. What does chapter 12 at that time have anything to do with the triumphal entry and the Lord coming near and what's going to take place? Guys, I'm working on this video for it. It's going to blow your mind. I'll give you a clue for those who have been following for a while. Zechariah 38:39. All right? I'm going to leave that with you. So when we come to the triumphal entry of Luke chapter 19, right after the triumphal entry, what do we see? This is only found in Luke. This is when the Lord is coming, that 40-day time frame after the bride is taken out. He comes near unto the city and he weeps over it. And he says, if you had known even in this thy day the things which belong to thy peace, but now, listen to this, are hid from thine eyes. Okay, when we talked about this in the 3 triumphal entries, the explanation of what follows immediately after the triumphal entry of Luke, Mark, and Matthew, it revealed the time frame it was talking about. It was amazing. And so what you're going to see here is that now it's hid from their eyes. Why is it saying now here it's going to be hid from their eyes when we know though that they're only blinded in part right now? The Jews are only blinded in part. But this says is now hid from thine eyes. Because in the end time revealing, in the end time eyes of understanding, this is talking about when he's coming at that 40 days, they're now going to be blinded completely. When those 40 days are over, guess what? It's the time of the Gentile church, the sleeping church. It'll be their last portion of those 7 years of seals. That 6 years of seals of tribulation. And in the 7th year of rest is when the rapture comes. Then, when trumpets begins, it will be the time of Jacob's trouble. All right? This is why it says it is hid from their eyes. Yet we're told all the time they're only blinded in part. Because right now they are blinded in part. But when the tribulation begins, they will be completely blinded when the 14 years begins. Because that first half is not for them. Now listen to what it says here in relation to Jeremiah. For the days shall come upon thee that thine enemy shall cast a trench round about. See? That thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee, and shall compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side. And they shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave one stone upon the other. Why? Because you knew not the time of your visitation. We've explained this time of visitation, right? We explained that escape of the bride, that the Lord, that God came and took out a people from among the Gentile for his name at the time of the visitation for the redeeming. All right? But let's take it a step further. I'd like to do another video on Luke's, on the 3 discourses as well. Maybe I can do it in a half an hour one. And again, God willing, we don't have much time left. But, you know, even on this weekend when we did the live show, I don't know if people caught it, but I showed a potential for March 8th, a potential at the 10th, maybe a potential by the 21st. I mean, we're in this time frame here in March, guys. We're in March 2020. You get it? For anybody that has been watching Ministry Revealed for any amount of time, for everything that has come to be revealed here, with an expiry date, we know when it is and everything that must take place before. Get excited. Don't worry. Please do not concern yourself with which exact day. Yes, we're going to talk about a little, look at this day connection here and look at this, but it doesn't matter. It's not something that we focus on. It's just that we're so close, we're seeing what points to these times. All right? And everything points to March, including Luke. Look at Luke's discourse, okay? We've covered this a lot in the past, and if we do have the chance and the time, I'll do a detailed Luke, Mark, Matthew discourse and show exactly where all this stuff is, the time frames within the years of all these events taking place. It's awesome. You see, he talks about here, like the others, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, earthquakes. But then he says, but before all these, this pure portion of time here is a 40-day portion of time where he says, but before all these, something has drastically changed in the earth, which I call the 40 days after the bride has escaped. I believe the bride is escaping before, at the beginning of the 40 days or before the 40 days, and that this is during the 40 days. It says, they're going to be bringing you up, delivering you into synagogues and into prisons, and some of you are going to be put to death. But not a hair on your head will perish. All right? And in your patience possess you your souls. They're not going to feel a thing even if you get killed, right? Which some will. This could literally begin sometime late March into April. Okay? I was telling my wife this tonight just before coming out. You look at all this COVID-19 stuff, and just literally a minute after I told my wife, excuse me, a minute after I told my wife that this might even be something, I mean, they can go in and start knocking on people's houses now like they're doing in Iran and like they've been doing in China and so forth. And guess what, guys? What if it comes over here? They could start knocking on people's doors and giving them those tests to see if they're too heated. Well, guess what? What if they do that for the Christians? They know our feeds. They can track all of us. They know who the Christians are by what they watch, what they follow, churches they attend. They could use this to start gathering Christians, you see? Well, soon as I said that, within a minute, I had turned around and my wife says, look at that. And they were saying, I think it was in South Korea, they wanted to, I don't know if they wanted to kill him or they wanted to do something like an imprisonment, maybe something really bad. I think they maybe even wanted to kill him. This pastor to a church in South Korea because he was sick, and now they say a bunch of the people had the COVID. Is that necessarily true? Or are they using that? And is this the type of thing? Now that's conspiracy stuff, but understand, guys, with this COVID-19 and the season we know we're living in, whether this COVID-19 explodes all over the earth or it's real, but they're going to use it to contain people in their homes on top of things because they know what's coming. I mean, the timing is perfect. The timing is perfect. And I'll tell you something. A lot of people will say, oh, well, read Matthew 24 with pestilence. Those who know Ministry Revealed know that Matthew 24 has nothing to do with the time of the beginning. And that Luke and Mark say nothing about pestilence. So it's interesting. I can't find where this outbreak, if you will, I can't find it in Scripture for the beginning time frame of tribulation. I think personally it would be too early, and there's no connection with the church. Okay, so I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying how they're closing up a lot of people in their homes is very, very interesting. So anyways, this is that portion of time that we're talking about, and we've talked about many times, is the 40 days. And look what happens towards the end of it. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. See? Then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Just like Daniel said, right? This is the first of those desolations. This is the first that's being spoken about. And it's precisely what Jeremiah is saying. In the 11th year of Netanyahu, he reigns 11 years. Netanyahu, March 31st. Here we go, March again. March 31st. There he is. Jerusalem and Judah. 52 before getting to 53. In the 9th year. And then we're going to see 10 years later. See? So what happens? Let's keep reading this now in Jeremiah 52 verse 4. The end portion of it. And pitched against it and built forts round about again. Built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. Okay, remember guys, these are types and shadows, all right? Things that will replay in time frames with similar characters. All right? People could say, oh, well, it already happened. All right, then stop looking for the king of Babylon. Why is everybody talking about Babylon? You see? We know it's the king of Babylon who's going to rise up against Jerusalem as well in the end times. And here he is besieging unto the 11th year of King Netanyahu. Now listen to this. Remember I said that 4th month? And in the 4th month, in the 9th day of the month, famine was sore in the city. So that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled. See? So in the 4th month, let's see what that would be this year. 9th day of the 4th month. Let's have a look at this. 9th day of the 4th month. Of Tammuz, there it is. Tammuz, the 9th day of the 4th month, July 1st. You see, what did we say? The escape, the 40 days of the Lord. So if we're looking at an escape taking place in March, somewhere in here, maybe even sometime next week, but on our toes all the time, sometime in March is the escape. We have a census taking place. We have the Lord, this could be this time when the Lord will come for 40 days that we've been talking about. If you're new to the channel, you must watch the other teachings to understand what we're talking about. So then the Lord is here for 40 days. The 40 days ends on Jerusalem Day. And what happens when the 40 days are over? Jerusalem is compassed about and they'll be attacked. The 14 years will have begun. When? The 40 days ends on the anniversary of Jerusalem when they would turn 53. Since Israel had them. And look at this. It says that by this time, it says, and in the 4th month, in the 9th day of the month, the famine was sore in the city. There was already a famine taking place in Jerusalem by this time. I mean, you see how close that is? You see how close that is? And why am I focusing on this one that's being spoken about in Jeremiah? Because Daniel told us about Jeremiah. That his 52 books held the 2 destructions. And it turns out in the 52 books in the 52 years that in the 52nd book, Jeremiah tells us about both of them. Let's keep going. And again, a rehash. What have the rabbis been saying? Netanyahu will be the last one and war will break out. They all know it. We showed it a few months ago. They don't know if it's Nibiru and it's going to bring destruction by something hitting Jerusalem. They don't know if it's maybe war coming from a nation. But they think they're going to be okay, you see? They think the Lord is going to protect them still in the land. He won't, which will bring us to Daniel 9, further into Daniel 9. He is going to remove them from the land. And he's going to give his land rest for 7 years. This is why they're telling you. Their own people are telling them. Netanyahu will be the last prime minister. There will never be another leader in Jerusalem. The Lord, the Messiah, comes next. All right? For those that are new, this stuff is going to mess you up. Because everything that you thought you understood about the end times is majority wrong. You've all been taught by Matthew. They've disregarded the book of Mark and the book of Luke. They're not just different viewpoints of the same time frame. They're different time frames. So, then what do we see? Then the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled, and went forth out of the city by night, by the way of the gate between the 2 walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were by the city round about, and they went by way of the plain. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook Netanyahu in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. And they took the king and carried him up unto the king of Babylon, and judgment was given to him there. And the king of Babylon slew the sons of Netanyahu before his eyes. He slew also all the princes of Judah. But he put out the eyes of Netanyahu, and the king of Babylon bound him in chains and carried him to Babylon and put him in prison till his death. End of attack number 1. End of attack with Netanyahu as the leader, as the king of Israel, the king over Jerusalem, in Jerusalem and Judah. His 11th year is March 31st, 2020. We've been talking about it being surrounded and besieged for over a year and a half. We know this is what's coming. You see, let's go to Daniel 9. Let's have a look here at Daniel 9. Watch this. So what do we have? The first desolation, what? At the accomplishment of the 70 years. The first of the desolations. Okay? Now watch this. This was one of those mysteries. We've talked about it. We've known it here for a while now. In Daniel 9:25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild, or to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, which also means shall be 7 years. Remember we were saying God is going to let his land rest for 7 years. Then, when the Lord returns on Mount Zion, not his feet down on the Mount of Olives, when he returns on Mount Zion, they will rebuild the city and the streets and the walls. You see, after 7 weeks or 7 years, there's a comma and, of which even Sir Isaac Newton said, they are a separation in time in these years. They could be added together, but the comma with the and is what we revealed is the separation with the addition. They are 2 separate periods of time. These 7 years are not spoken about here in Daniel. They're not spoken about because they're to the Gentiles. It'll be the time when he gives his land rest. Why? Because in those 7 sevens that they've had it, now it's 52 years, they never allowed the land to rest. Every 7th Shemitah, right? Every 7 years on the Shemitah, they're to let the land rest. And they refused. The rabbis know this as well. We showed a video on this. They know they haven't been obedient in all of the laws. They know they failed on these things. And they know the attack is coming. They just don't know to the extent that we teach here, that we show from Scripture, even in their own books here in the Old Testament. You see? 7, like Zechariah. These first 7 years. So first 7 years. What happens? It said 70 years. Those past tense 70 years. So if we go back 7 more years, we should be able to find, you guys all know this, we should be able to find the current 70 years. And look at that. These 70 years. How long, O Lord, will thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which you have had indignation these 70 years? You see that? Against what? Jerusalem and the cities of Judah. You see, all these guys are speaking the same language. What did he say? For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and in Judah, till he had cast them out from his presence during the time of who? Netanyahu. You understand, guys? We know what we're talking about. The scriptures are being revealed. These are those 7 years where he's going to let that land rest. They're about to be attacked, surrounded and attacked. Jerusalem will be tread upon by the Gentiles for years, because it's going to be the time of the Muslim guys. They're rising up against the Christians. And then what will happen? Those who will rise up against the Jews won't be any normal group. All right? Yes, it could be the rise of Babylon, or Babylon still there, but we know who comes. It'll be when Satan comes. You see, this here, the first half of seals, or say the first 3 or so years of seals, is World War III. It's craziness. It's chaos, because it's going to be a true world war. But then a time's going to come when the Antichrist will be given his power to continue 42 months. That is when the mark will be mandatory, when Christians will be killed for their faith, lined up and brought in to be killed, whether they denounce or believe in the Lord. It's not the bride that's going to be there. It will be for the sleeping church that will wake up during the time of tribulation. You see, it's about that mid-ish time frame. Well, when the trumpets time comes, the beginning of trumpets, the Lord is on Mount Zion with the 144,000 about to be sent out. By the 5th trumpet time, at the start of the 5th trumpet, the pit is open. Satan has been cast down, and his fallen angels with him. These are the guys that are then going to go chase after Judah and the 2 witnesses and 144,000 and everything. Seals is for the church, the sleeping church. And trumpets is Judah, Jacob's trouble. And the first 3.5 years, while these horns are being blown, these first 4 horns, first 4 trumpets are being blown throughout the earth, Jerusalem will be surrounded and protected, because the Lord will be on Zion. Okay? So what happens after these 7 years of seals? Well, then there's the 3.5 years when the Lord has what I just showed you. The Lord will return at the beginning of trumpets, or I shouldn't say return at that time, but he will be on Zion, having come down on that rock carved without hand. I don't know if it's going to hover above there. I don't know what it's going to look like. Okay? I have no idea. But he comes at the beginning of trumpets. And the city and the streets and the walls, just like we read here, even the walls are going to be built during the troublous times, like I showed you, of trumpets taking place on the earth. And they're going to rebuild the temple. After the 7 years of seals and the land has rested, for the first 3.5 years of trumpets with Messiah, with the Lord on Mount Zion, and Zechariah told it to us. All right? See, 7 gone by, and then chapter 8 would be the beginning of trumpets. And look, the Lord is on Mount Zion. The Lord is returned, saying, I am returned unto Zion and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, the mountain of the Lord, the holy mountain. And you could see, let your hands be strong, you that hear in these days the mouth of the words of the prophets, when the foundation was laid, that the temple might be built. And what happened before this? There was affliction. The tribulation was on the earth. Peace was taken from the earth, and neighbor was set against neighbor. Why? Because the great sword was given to the slayer, as we read in Ezekiel 21, in that revelation we had a week ago. So you following what's going on here? We're going to do a detailed 30-minute teaching, God willing as well, on this Daniel 9 understanding for those that are newer, or those that want it in a shorter time frame. So we've now covered this first attack. It doesn't get any more clear. It confirms that it's Netanyahu, even like the rabbis are saying. Remember, it's all types and shadows. He reigned for 11 years. Just so happens Netanyahu is March 31st, 2020 is 11th year. It'll be elections and no government. Well, that has happened. Now they're going to the third election in 1 year. You follow? And we know that from now, 2020, springish time frame of 2020, you add 13 years, the end of 13 years is the spring of 2033, and that's when the Lord will return feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end and will fulfill the final year. You following? And where else did it line up? It lines up with Zechariah by telling us in the 4th month there had already been a famine. They had already been attacked or surrounded and being blocked out. And then they were broken up and they fled and so forth. Well, now check this out. Now we go to Jeremiah 52:12. So what would this be? Remember we said at the beginning? 10 years later. What does it say? Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Nebuzaradan, came to this guy, captain of the guard, which served the king of Babylon unto Jerusalem, and burned the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and all the houses of the great men burned with fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans, which were with the captain of the guard, broke down the walls of Jerusalem round about. You see, what did we just show? If they're going to be destroyed at the beginning, and that's what kicks everything off, and everything, it's going to rest or be trampled on by the Gentiles for 7 years. When do the walls get built again? For them to destroy the house of the Lord and to break down the walls, guess what must have happened first? Guess what must have happened first? They must have rebuilt the temple. They must have started to rebuild the walls. See, let your hands be strong, because they're rebuilding the city and the streets and the walls. You see, Daniel chapter 9. Just as we were saying, after these 7 years of seals, the first destruction happens, 7 years of seals take place, and then the Lord returns on Mount Zion, like we showed, Zechariah chapter 8, we showed in the chart. And what are they going to do? They're going to start rebuilding the city and the wall, even in troublous times. And they're going to rebuild the temple. So for them to be able to destroy the temple, for them to be able to burn it all, for them to be able to destroy the walls, they must have been rebuilt. They must have been rebuilt. And when did we show it? They're rebuilding during the first 3.5 years of trumpets. So if it's 7 years and about 3.5 years, you're about 10.5 years approximately to when Satan will have been cast down to the earth and his fallen angels with him. And the pit opened up. Well, what did we just show in Jeremiah? We just showed from the 9th year to now the 19th year. And this time is destruction of the house of the Lord and breaking down the walls. And Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive certain of the poor of the people and the residue of the people that remained in the city, and those that fell away, that fell to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the multitude, the captain of the guard, left certain of the poor of the land for vine dressers and for husbandmen. You see, guys, this is all about the two attacks. And this second attack, you see what it's talking about now? Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month. Which day is this? Remember we were saying this year everything must happen before this date. But 10 years from now, approximately 10 and a half years from now, they will have what? You see, remember how I'm saying approximately 10 and a half years from when it begins? Think Nisan 1, this beginning of springtime, this approximate time frame of when they turn 71, which is when the tribulation, when the 14 years will begin. Well, guess what? 10 and a half years later, we say approximately 10 and a half years later. Well, what's the 9th of Av? It's the 5th month. That's pretty darn close to 10 and a half years, isn't it? It's 10 years and 5 months later. 5 months and 9 days. And what was the 9th of Av? You see that comment and all that stuff going on the 9th of Av in Jeremiah 25, starting in 12, can't have anything to do with the first attack. There was no temple. There was no walls. They were already destroyed and vacant. You see? And look at what the history is about the 9th of Av. And the 9th day, the fast commemorates the destruction of both the first and the second temple in Jerusalem. It will replay again. Do you think it's a coincidence that the first one was destroyed on this day, that the second one was destroyed on this day, and now we've got our type and shadow revealing to us the third time? You see, guys, this is the type of thing that nobody can understand unless you understand the 14 years. Without the 14 years, this is utterly impossible. Absolutely impossible. It is the truth of the 14 years, which is what, in fact, this video, the last one we did, was all about. We jam-packed in 31 minutes a ton, I think 5 descriptions broken down of the 14 years given to us in Scripture, and that was just a portion of them. I can only fit as much as I could into 31 minutes. So you following? They will be destroyed again when the temple will be rebuilt. And it won't be rebuilt until Messiah, just like Daniel says. You even see that? Watch this. In Daniel 9, nobody ever, they think it means the anointed, like the Antichrist being anointed. When it says to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince. And they say, oh, it just means anointed. And then it says, and after the 62 weeks, after the about 3.5 years, shall Messiah be cut off. It's clearly telling us it's the Messiah who we think the Messiah is. But because of the understanding that's been put out there for a couple hundred years, everybody thinks Daniel 9:27 is speaking about it being 7 years. And in the middle of it, that's when the Antichrist, who's Satan, comes. All of this, I beat it with a stick all the time, because it all stems from us having been taught from Matthew for generations, when we should have been taught Luke, Mark, and Matthew. They are all 3 different periods of time. Luke is gone here. This is the 7 years of seals, and the rest of this is the 7 years of trumpets. Okay? 3.5 years while they're going to rebuild the city and the streets. When those 3.5 years are done, Messiah is going to be cut off. Why? Because the people of the prince that shall come, and what? And what? Destroy the city and the sanctuary. What was that? Well, did you see that? Did you see the two that Daniel's talking about? That are the two from Jeremiah 52? Did you see that? What does he say in Daniel 9:25? Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. To restore and to build Jerusalem, guess what? It would already have to be attacked, wouldn't it? How come nobody teaches you that? How come all the other teachers out there aren't telling you in Daniel 9:25, it says first, pay attention, it has to be attacked and destroyed before it can be restored and rebuilt. And then what do we see down here? It's destroyed again. What time frame is this? If this is 7 and this is 3.5, that's about 10.5 years. Precisely. And the first one had a connection to the 4th month, which was why Zechariah chapter 7 didn't say the 4th month, but said the 5th, and why in Zechariah chapter 8 it said the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th. Guys, we're at the door. We are at the door. The second great destruction is the 9th of Av. Let's go look at it. Where would the 9th of Av be? Which one is that? All of 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, 29 into 30. That would be 30. This is the time frame, guys. This isn't for any of us, by the way. All right? This is just to grow in understanding of end time scripture. 2030. The springtime of 2030, or I guess summertime of 2030, is when Satan will be cast out. This is the time frame right in here. On the 9th of Av, somewhere in this time frame here is when Satan will be cast down to the earth. His time here on the earth, as we kind of finish this up, his time here on the earth is only going to be 2.5 years. This is all stuff we'll get into in greater detail. I'll go into great detail within that 30-minute one that we'll do on Daniel. But you see how we said this is your 7 years of seals. There's nothing spoken about here except there's this, comma, and then there's this. So you have the 7 years of seals, during which the commandment had gone out after it was destroyed once, but it won't get rebuilt because World War III will break out. It'll rest for 7 years, be tread upon, and so forth. And then Messiah returns on Mount Zion. You see? On Mount Zion. It'll be the city of the Lord. The mountain of the Lord. Which is why in Revelation chapter 14, you see the Lamb on Zion with the 144,000. And they're about to go out and do their work. You see? So you've got this destruction. And did you catch it? You have the destruction before what? If a commandment's going to go out to restore and to rebuild, look at what it says. Unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. So this commandment is going to go out to restore and to rebuild before the first 7 even begins. You getting how close we are? You understanding how close? So what do we have? The 7 years? We have the 3.5 years, and during these 3.5 years, they're rebuilding the city and the streets and the wall and the temple. And at the end of those 3.5, Messiah is cut off, just like this whole thing today was about with Jeremiah and Daniel, up to this 10-ish-and-a-half year time frame, which would be the middle-ish of, or July-ish, August of 2030, when Satan will be cast down to the earth. See, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy, there's the second destruction, the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with the flood. This is when Satan chases them with the flood out of his mouth. And the Lord opens it up. And then it says, and unto the end of the war. There's an end of a war. Desolations, destructions are determined. And then it says, and he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. This is the Lord. confirming his covenant when he comes at the end of 13 years. So if this is 10 and a half and this is 1, how much is the time frame when Satan is here? 2.5 years. But when he chased them away with the flood, those who were in Judea, those who were in Jerusalem at that time, while the city and the streets were being rebuilt and everything was going great, when they were chased away with the flood and they got to the Revelation 12:14 and they got to go into the wilderness for a time and half a time, they will remain in the wilderness, protected and fed and so forth, for the duration to the end of the 14 years. But this is 2.5 years with Satan and his minions and everybody else. But the Lord will come after 13 years and will be here for this final year, which is the 14th year. And in the midst of it, he's going to cause this overspreading of abominations that these guys did. He's going to destroy them. And this is why we were talking about in other videos recently. See, I go back to Zechariah again, because Zechariah is written for the Jews. Hosea is written to the Gentiles. So what is it saying in Zechariah 14? Look at this. The Lord has returned feet down on the Mount of Olives. And then what does he do? This is what I call he's Zechariah 14's them. He's going to smite them. All that came against Jerusalem, he's now going to smite them. When? In the 14th year. He's coming at the beginning. Just like if you watch that 14-year intro video. Who came when Abraham turned 100? The promise came, but his first one came, who was tribulation, affliction, came when he was 86. What was it? After 13, a covenant. In the 14th year at the beginning, boom, the promise comes. It's the same thing over and over and over. So I'll finish up with this just to show you guys, give you a taste of that other one, the 30-minute Daniel one. We showed how it's 7, then 3.5 years with the Lord on Mount Zion, and they're rebuilding the city and the streets until Satan and the pit is opened. And the fallen angels and the craziness that it'll be. And they're going to what? Jeremiah 52 verse 12. At the 9th of Av, they're going to go in and they're going to destroy the city and the sanctuary again. And break down the walls that were built during the first 3.5 years of trumpets. And they're going to do this for 2.5 years. It'll be chaos on the earth. I mean chaos where they're eating each other. Oh yeah. Go read more in Zechariah. All right? It'll be craziness at this point. And then the Lord will return at that final year like I just showed in Zechariah 14, right? So if it's 7 and then 3.5 and it ends with 1, that means this portion when they're here lasts 2.5 years. Well, how can we prove that? Daniel chapter 12. Check this out. And he says unto them in Daniel 12, verse 7. We'll end it with this. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and sware by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. How long? Time, times, and a half. Do you notice there's no and here? Just a time, times, and a half. There's only one word and in this combination of words. Because it's 1, 2, plus a half, 2.5 years. Like I said, I'm just about done. In Revelation 12, verse 14, look at what it says. When Satan goes and chases them and they're going to fly away into the wilderness, what does it say? For a time and times and half a time. What does this mean? 1 plus 2 plus a half, 3.5 years. They will remain hidden in the wilderness, protected for 3.5 years. While what? While Satan and the fallen angels and all of those guys with them will be here destroying everything, claiming to be God and take all power on the earth to himself. And it will last for 2.5 years. And the Lord will return feet down on the Mount of Olives at the 14th year, at the end of 13, at the start of 14 years, and will fulfill that final year himself, which is what I showed earlier, Zechariah chapter 14. See how awesome this is? You find the destructions, one destruction there, the other destruction isn't talked about, except to say that it must have already happened. So, if he told us there were 2 of them, and we can understand by the books of the numbers of Jeremiah, and we go to his brother, our brother Jeremiah, and Jeremiah had 52 books, and the connection is they got 52 books, and Jerusalem, who it's connected to, is 52 years old, and it's the 70 years that would be accomplished. Hello. Hello. See how awesome this was? That we taught on this like about a year ago? That Zedekiah is Netanyahu. He reigns 11 years. His reign of 11 is March 31st. It's relating to Jerusalem and Judah, just like Daniel said. They'll be compassed about and destroyed, just like Luke said over and over again. It'll be connected to the 4th month. They'll be surrounded and besieged. This is why we're saying, if people know people in Jerusalem, feel free to share these videos with them. If you have family or friends, if you're running in the street, running around telling people, if you're comfortable enough doing that, if you feel the Lord's leading you to that in Jerusalem. But other than that, it's time to tell them. It's time to tell them to get out. Don't wait until it begins. Get out now. It's coming, guys. We're days to weeks away from all of this beginning. All right, guys. I pray this blesses you. I pray this gives you excitement into a greater understanding of the scriptures, into what Daniel is referring to in Jeremiah, that we can understand these destructions and give warning and understanding to those who will be left, and hopefully wake them up before. All right, guys, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all your prayers for me and my family. You guys were so kind when I brought my wife to say a quick hello so you guys can see her on the live show on Saturday. That was awesome. So, guys, with that, thank you very much. God bless you. God bless you. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Bye for now.